Good morning. It is morning time, morning coffee, morning face. I probably rolled out of bed 10 minutes ago. Um, I procrastinated once again making a video, so I have to hustle and make this and then upload it. So welcome if you're new here. My name's Kara, and I use this channel because I'm doing a 1 year long low-buy project to keep a tight budget to pay off student loans. I usually record on Mondays and post on Thursdays. And on the months where there are fifth Mondays, I told myself that I'll use those fifth Mondays to do book reviews and just share books that matter to me. And even though I didn't exactly record on Monday, which would have been the actual fifth Monday, this week you're going to get a book review from me. So welcome aboard. The books that I wanted to share, yes, that's plural because there's a few of them here. I wanted to share just this very teeny tiny book. I stumbled across this in a used bookstore when I was in college, and that was now approaching like 15 to 16 years ago. It's been a while. And when I came across this, I was in a point in life where I had grown up. So this author is a Catholic writer. He's very famous. His name is Thomas Merton. But I didn't grow up Catholic, and I'm not Catholic. So as a college student, I was involved in a campus ministry that was evangelical and very, I guess, enthusiastic is a good word. And I had grown up Protestant. I was Lutheran, and not known for super enthusiastic expressions of faith. So that college ministry was a little bit of whiplash for me, and a lot of cognitive dissonance. And those were good things to go through. It was hard at the time. It was so surprisingly hard at the time. But it was a good thing to go through and to evaluate what I had been given in my own family and in our traditions, and then to encounter a new expression of Christianity, or at least new to me, and to be both invigorated by that and challenged, and most of the time I was kind of overwhelmed by it. Anyway, so I was at that stage in life where I was full of cognitive dissonance and trying to figure out what I really believed. And I came across this in a bookstore, and it's so tiny. It's a pocket edition of a book of Thomas Merton's called Thoughts in Solitude. And these are just short reflections. I think maybe there's 30 of them. What's the last? 18 there, and yeah, there are 2 parts, and yeah, there's fewer than 40. There's like 37. Can Kara add? Can Kara add this early in the morning? There's 37 tiny little reflections in here that might only be a couple of pages at the longest if this book was a normal-sized book. And from the very first, I felt like I had found somebody who understood that spirituality was really complicated and that faith was partly a journey of figuring out specific beliefs and dogmas and how you understood them. It was partly an intellectual journey, but that it was also a journey of the heart, and that there was this affective feeling side of things. And then there's also something more that is not rational, and it is also not sentimental, but maybe it could be called like a steadiness of presence, where you sense, but it's kind of beyond sensing. Like if somebody tied me down and forced me to say when I could feel if God was around or not. First of all, God's everywhere. But second, no, I don't always feel that. And so that's not quite the sense that I mean. Anyway, I stumbled upon this book, and from the very first page felt like this person knows that this is hard and complicated and that it consumes your whole person. This is an existential issue. This is not just what kind of songs are we going to sing and what kind of charity are we going to do. It consumes the person. This is about what you give yourself to, and are you devoted? And I was at that level of needing to know that somebody else experienced it that way, and I found him. So Thomas Merton has been a wonderful person on a journey with me, and he himself is a fascinating person. He studied a lot of Eastern religions and traveled in the East. He actually died in Thailand. He was like a freak accident. He got out of a shower, and when he reached for a light switch, he was electrocuted. So a tragic ending to somebody's life who still had a lot to say, I imagine. Yeah, and I mean, his biography, or is it an autobiography? It's an autobiography. It's called The 7-Story Mountain, and people usually rant and rave about how wonderful that is. I mean, it was good to read the story of his life and his telling of how he moved from being a student and an artist and just a man who had been born in France and came to college in the United States, and then became a monk. It's that story of his journey and how the Christian faith grabbed a hold of him and what it came to mean. I liked knowing the story. I just didn't find it to be his best writing and most compelling. So I prefer his essays, and I have one book of his that's a collection of essays. And this is probably a book that I find the most valuable on my bookshelf. If my house was on fire and I was running away, I would grab this. And it's called Raids on the Unspeakable. And I knew that this would be my favorite the minute I opened it up and read the introduction, because he writes the foreword admonishing his little book itself as if it were a child getting ready to go out into the world. Well, Raids, you're grown up now. It's time for you to go out and meet people as the other books have done. They've usually managed pretty well on their own. They were, for the most part, good-mannered. Some of them were even fairly devout. As for you, you may need special advice. I must say you have proved yourself to be a little unusual. It's your poetic temperament. I would hardly call you devout, though I have found you meditating in your own way, not often in church. But you must remember that most of your brothers went to the seminary, and you will be expected to act like a seminarian yourself. This, I fear, is where you will run into trouble. And he goes on to tell his little book, get out there and be yourself anyway. Part of what I love about this book is, again, Merton admitting and wrestling with how complicated the spiritual life is, and that sometimes trying to express what you are really experiencing, you will borrow language, you will borrow description from outside the Christian tradition and use it. So full disclosure, yes, this is the first time on YouTube that I've talked about faith or anything like this at all. This was a seriously important part of my life. And how serious? Well, this is how serious. Figuring out faith, figuring out all of that for me was the major portion of my life. And it was definitely all of my 20s and most of my 30s as well. And it still is. I'm still a church-going person. But when I say that I was very deeply serious about this, I actually have gone to seminary and in the Lutheran tradition, and I was ordained a minister, and I served a church outside of Seattle for close to 5 years. So that was the first career that I've mentioned a couple times, and I have mentioned a couple times that it was very stressful and that I couldn't hack it. And that was the life of a pastor. I couldn't hack it. And yet the truth of the spiritual life, the truth of the Christian faith, and what that means, and how it digs into the deepest corners of our lives and corners of our hearts. And Jesus addresses us. And Jesus addresses us, and you are answering as if he is real or not. And in these modern times, postmodern times even, answering as if he is real is probably the hardest thing, because there's no support for that. There's no support for that in our culture, and there's no support for that even in our experience, which in this age is tempered by a deep, deep materialism. So while I believe it and I trust it, it is still really hard to do that. So I enjoy a complicated writer like Thomas Merton, who also found it to be the most worthy thing to give his life to. And he screwed up a lot. You'll find people who will be very happy to tell you about the foibles and weaknesses of Thomas Merton. Well, you could do the same about me, so I will not be throwing any stones. So anyway, these books, Raids on the Unspeakable is a collection of essays, definitely my favorite. This little collection was my gateway drug. I found another little pocket edition, and I thought, oh, that's great, have another little book. And this is just a collection of snippets. Somebody compiled them. Who did? Robert Inkowski. Great. He compiled these paragraphs out of all kinds of Thomas's writings, that many of which I've dabbled and read parts of. Most of them I haven't. Another book of his I came across late in college and had a very big impact on me was this book, The New Man. The title's very tiny, hiding in there in the neutral colors. And The New Man is something of an anthropology. It's something like an anthropology, where he's looking at the question of who a person is in light of who God is, and how does God communicate and come to the person, and just what is our anthropology? What do we believe about ourselves? At no point does he throw these questions on a page and answer them directly, but to me this book is an anthropology. It is a picture of what the human person is, and what the human person can be when allowing truth to guide them. Very beautiful. I don't know how this video is going to come across, but this is a series of books, an author who has meant a great deal to me as my life has transformed. He was with me, in a sense, as I went to seminary and as I became a minister, and also with me as I realized in the way that life is so complicated that was not the right place for me to be, and that it was also faithful to stop. Also faithful to stop being a minister, and faithful to move on and build this chapter of life. I don't know what it will become, but it's faithful to be there. And so he's a complicated man. Life is complicated. If you are of any kind of spiritual inclination, I recommend him highly to you. We've finished our book review. It is Thursday morning, so I'm going to finish this up and get it posted, and I will see you in a week. And in September, I am going to, well, it is September now. In September, on the days that I post videos, I'm going to be sharing more sort of stories of life and how these things came to pass. And we'll see how that goes. So hopefully not boring, and at the end of the month, I'll tell you how all the bill paying goes. Thank you. See you in a week.